Just 2 months left until convention time. Unless Bernie pulls off the comeback of a century here, it's just about safe to assume the general election is going to be Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. So who are they going to run with? Are we going to see a unity ticket between Hillary and Bernie? Or Trump running with Geraldo Rivera as his vice president like he joked about? Take a look.
He's a dynamic young leader for the future of our party, the future of our nation. And I introduce to you now, my friend, the next vice president of the United States, Senator Dan Quayle of Indiana.
A few things that I know about Al Gore. In the most challenging moments when we face the most difficult issues of war and peace, of whether to take on some powerful interest, he was always there. And he always told me exactly what he thought was right.
A lot of people were there for all 8 years, and I became good friends with him, like Vice President Cheney. And, you know, I don't see him much.
Joining me now is Director of the Democracy Project for the Bipartisan Policy Center, John Fortier. John, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, John, this vice presidential vetting process, tell me about this. It's got to be very personal. Is it to the level of a security clearance for the military or for the government?
It absolutely is. It's a long process. It's not done by the government at all. It's done by the campaigns without the resources of the FBI. But the questions they will ask the finalists are the most personal that you can imagine. So if you're not willing to really put yourself up for the job, you should be answering those questions because they are very, very invasive questions. Because
give me some examples here. What kind of stuff do they ask them?
Well, they'll ask if you've had affairs or illegitimate children. They'll ask all sorts of tax questions. You'll provide your very detailed financial information. So it really is a very, very detailed analysis of everything in your life. If you've had something, you need to fess up because they're going to look into it.
All right, what disqualifies somebody then? Because we've seen candidates on both sides of the aisle who have some skeletons in their closet, not necessarily in the terrible way, but they're certainly not impeccable here. So what would actually disqualify someone?
Well, in a way, I don't want to focus too much on that. I think there are some that just won't make it through because of a scandal. That's true. We probably won't know about them because they won't be made public to the media. But it is true that ultimately this person might have to be the president of the United States. And for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton to be picking somebody, it's not just about politics. It's not just about having an advisor. It's really about picking someone who could step into the job if needed, if God forbid one of them didn't make it through their presidency.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Hopefully they'll both keep an eye on that, or that'll be their primary criteria, if you will. But let's talk about these individual processes then. Start with Trump. His vice presidential selection committee, headed by Ben Carson right now. John, are we going to see another Dick Cheney type situation where Carson selects himself as the best running mate?
Yeah, no, that was a not a common situation where Dick Cheney, originally in charge of the committee, became the vice president. I don't think we'll see that. I think Donald Trump has said he will pick someone who's a Republican and someone who is has some experience in public policy. He doesn't have that experience, so he's not going to pick an outsider, not going to pick an independent or a Democrat. And I don't think it's going to be Ben Carson, although for him to be an ambassador to certain parts of the party may not be a bad thing.
Sure, and Trump said that there are basically three different types of people in politics: political, military, and business. He's got the military, he's got the business rather. His advisors have the military, so he wants to pick someone political. John, who do you see that being? Rubio, Christie, Kasich?
Well, I think they'll all be on the list. I mean, especially Chris Christie has formally endorsed Donald Trump, but I think he will consider people who ran against him that he knows. I mean, one other factor really that both need to consider is if you don't know the person well, you have to spend some time with these finalists. You have to get them out on the campaign trail. And we do have cases in the past where the presidents didn't know the candidates very well. And it's really partly feeling comfortable with them, feeling like they can be a partner to campaign with, and ultimately feeling like a partner you might be spending 4 or 8 years with in the White House.
Right, it's almost like vetting a marriage partner. You got to make sure the chemistry's right, or else you're not setting yourself up for success. How do you expect this to impact his campaign, though? Because there have been people, celebrities and politicians, who've both endorsed Trump along the way or disavowed his candidacy. And while it makes news waves for a couple days, nothing really significant that I can think of has come from either the endorsements or the lack of endorsements. How do you see this impacting it?
Usually, I think sometimes we focus too much on if there's a little bit of a political benefit of picking somebody from one state or the other. I think for Donald Trump, the political benefit for him might be someone who unifies the party in some way, reaches out to a constituency, shows some voters that he is ensconced in the Republican Party and discourages those who are worried that he's not a real Republican.
Right, like picking Ted Cruz, that would make media headlines for a long time. All right, John, let's turn to Hillary here. So her vice presidential selection committee, that process is being run by a man named James Hamilton. That's the same man who ran Obama's vice presidential selection committee in 2008. I mean, he did a pretty good job. I think Biden, as much as I make fun of him, he does compliment Obama in the type of administration that Obama wants to run. Who's Hillary looking for? What type of individual to be her running mate?
Well, Hillary, of course, has been in politics and in Washington for a long time and knows most of the people she would be selecting. That still doesn't mean she can avoid vetting them, but it's the case that she really does know the field pretty well. I think one danger for her is she's an experienced person, and some people will say, well, pick a fresh face, pick somebody who's not experienced. And, you know, if the end game really is to have somebody who would be president if need be, or also be a strong partner and advisor in the White House, you really don't want to pick someone without any experience. So I think there's that one challenge. And then the second challenge for her really is there's going to be some pressure from the Bernie Sanders wing of the party to pick someone more like Bernie Sanders. I don't think it's going to be Bernie Sanders himself, and probably not Elizabeth Warren, but perhaps a Sherrod Brown from Ohio or someone more on the left of the party would appeal to that group. On the other hand, maybe Hillary Clinton, when you get done with the process, feels strong enough that she doesn't have to put somebody on for Bernie Sanders. So I think, again, it's not a calculation for her about winning one state or one region, but how it plays with the unity of her party.
Right, I don't think it's that smart for either party, to be honest, to pick someone based off of the election. Not only for the national security's sake, like you were saying, because this individual could very well be the president if something, God forbid, were to happen to the president, but statistics have shown, past elections have shown that the vice president, the pick at the beginning, doesn't ultimately affect the outcome of the election. There's a temporary blip in the numbers based off of that person, then it kind of steadies out. So I don't think it's a very smart strategy either way. But one more question about Hillary. What role do you expect a vice president, if she were president, her vice president, to play in her administration? Would she give them a large role, or would they just be a figurehead?
Well, I really think we've seen in the last 40 years, starting with Walter Mondale for Jimmy Carter, the vice presidents have become more and more important. And you look both at Joe Biden and Dick Cheney have significant roles, significant experience, significant staffs in the White House. I think we're going to continue that. Back in the old days when the parties would throw two people together to run, a president and a vice president who didn't really know each other, didn't like each other, that wasn't a really good recipe for having a strong vice president. But I think the precedent has been set. And she will find a portfolio for this person which will play to his or her strengths.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, that's for sure. I'm looking forward to when they both, Hillary and Trump, both announce. But John, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for being here. After the break, how are Democrats going to argue that Hispanics hate Trump if Hispanics actually like Trump better than they like Hillary? Anthony Tall is here in just a moment.